We're gonna play around with mixing some Saphir Pommadier cream polishes in order to achieve custom cream polishes that match some of these wild and crazy patinas that you see out there in the shoe world. But first, some inspiration. The Saphir Reno'Mat Pommadier cream polish is widely considered to be some of the best shoe polish in the world, especially by shoe aficionados, and they have a wide palette range. Right here, I've got 14 different colors of their famous polish, but as we've seen over the years, there are some crazy and absolutely outlandish patinas out there that don't even fall within the range of these 16 colors. Especially some of the crazy patinas coming out of Paris, the famous shoemaker Corthay comes straight to my mind. You can see that they have these incredible custom patinas that they build up using alcohol-based leather dyes on crust leather, which is undyed, totally blank canvas of leather. Here is a beautiful photograph showing just how wide that range can be, from bright, almost motor blue, to burgundy, to green, to a beautiful cognac. So to kind of make this a little bit of a practical example, I thought I would resurrect or bring back from the dead a bright purple, pinkish, reddish, whatever, pair of TLBs. Now these were actually a pair of crust leather shoes that we ordered just to kind of play around with the patina process. And you can see, for good reason, these were pretty much abandoned. But we're gonna see, can we mix a custom polish using what we have right here, a palette and a paintbrush, to see if we can create a custom polish to match these shoes. So let's get started. So as I said, these purple fuchsia patina rejects are gonna be what we experiment on today. I figured it was a sufficiently difficult color to match, especially given what even for Saphir is a pretty wide range of colors. So I've got my Bob Ross inspired color palette. We've got some white paper so that you can see what I'm doing. I've got a paintbrush, and we've got the full range of Saphir colors here. So let's see where to start. So there's two obvious choices for us to begin. The number 12 Hermes Red, which is probably where this shoe was meant to go. And then second being the number 8 Bordeaux or Burgundy. This is kind of a purplish color. Now, neither of these two colors are a perfect match, although this Hermes Red is not far off, but let's see if we can get closer. Now, of my color palette right here, I really don't think that there's anything I'm gonna add, but I do have two other really important colors for this particular project. One, I have the Saphir Reno'Mat Pommadier cream polish in a neutral, but also I've got a white pigment. This is the Blanc or white, color number 21. This is only offered in the Saphir Beaute de Cuir, which is the range right underneath the Medal d'Or. It's not as exceptional as the Medal d'Or, but it's pretty dang good polish. And it is the only pure white pigment that we have, which is different than the neutral, which is basically just all of the solvents and no pigment at all. So what we're gonna see here is this actually kind of helps us produce a little bit more of a creamier texture, easier than the neutral does. So let's get started. All right, so let's start first with the Bordeaux or Burgundy number 8. So I'm gonna get some of this polish out. Okay, and let's take this two different directions. So first, let's take some of the neutral cream polish and see what this does. So we're gonna add this, mix it around. So not really there. So let's try instead some of the white. So this is making a nice plum color almost. And you can see big difference in the way that this white pigment actually lightens the pigment of the polish. Let's see how this is. So again, it's not as fuchsia as this particular color is. And this one right here might be a good remedy, but it's really not where we need to be. So let's try instead starting with the Hermes Red, which is actually probably one of my favorite color polishes. Again, keeping in mind that any pigment of a cream polish is transparent and is really just going to tint. The Hermes Red is a great polish to use on a burgundy pair of shoes. Again, it kind of brings out those stronger reds. Mahogany, you can use the Hermes Red, even though we do have another mahogany polish. This is the mahogany, and this is the Hermes Red. This is more of kind of a rustier, earthier kind of clay texture, whereas the Hermes Red has more of that vibrant red. So if you have a pair of mahogany shoes and want to kind of brighten them up a little bit, a little Hermes Red will do the trick. I've even seen people use Hermes Red on black to give it a slight little kind of red glimmer in the sunlight. Let's take some of the white polish. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to add the darker color to the light color. So we're going to start with the white, kind of move some more of this in here. Big difference. Okay, look at the difference in color there. All right, so this is a little bit more of a palish red, not quite a fuchsia, but still closer than these other three. And I'd say that that's actually not a bad match. Maybe we could add a little bit more pigment, but this isn't that bad. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think in the comments here. Am I wasting my time, or are we gonna be able to get there? Let me know what you think. Also, I'd love to hear kind of what your craziest colored pair of shoes are. I think that probably the craziest colored pair of shoes I ever had was kind of a real kind of deep blue like this. It was meant to be a midnight blue, but to be honest, whenever I wore them out, any time where the sun wasn't completely set, I looked a little silly in these blue shoes, and needless to say, I've since kind of gotten rid of them. Let's add a little bit of blue polish to this and just see what that does, just for fun. Okay, so we've got that here. Let's add, yep, so these seem to be kind of neutralizing each other, not really doing anything. So let's see. All right, so here we go. We're gonna let's add a little bit more red pigment to this and then see what we can do. So I'm gonna add this with a paintbrush. You could use a chamois or your fingers, doesn't really matter. Now, one of the things that, again, this leather is gonna benefit the most from is really just the addition of waxes. I mean, if I was not trying to match this perfectly and really wanted to take this a different direction than trying to, again, match it, I would probably darken these areas. Maybe I would use, even some of the blue to kind of burnish this and to bring out kind of a little bit of a darker color. And again, around here, if you really wanted to suppress that color, you could use a brown on top of this. Again, that brown polish is just going to be tinting. And it's not going to totally change the texture, so you'll still have that red, that fuchsia kind of showing through kind of the background, but that brown polish is going to mute it, it's going to suppress it a little bit and tone it down. So let's apply that, see what happens. Okay, well, while that's drying, let's have some fun here and play around with some of these other colors. All right, so here is a really interesting mustard green. That is a very kind of generous, it's a generous characterization of this color. So let's see if we can take this green and kind of lighten it to really match that. So I don't know if you can see this in the photograph right there. I've got a clean brush. So again, this would be probably too dark of a green. Let's take a little bit of white to it. Not quite there, it's still a little too forest greeny. So let's add a little bit of light brown. So let's see what happens here. Again, I was not an art major, so we're kind of doing this on the fly. So look, this is really kind of paling that out. Again, we're getting that pale green, and actually it was the brown that was doing that more than even the white. So look at that, that is not that bad of a match. So let's look at that. So here we go, so look at that. All right. Let me know what you think. Again, this is a little bit outside of our wheelhouse. You do have to understand that the majority of my shoes are simply black. But let's have some fun and see what type of colors we can create with these beautiful polishes. Okay, so that light brown had a nice effect. Let's see if we darken it a little bit. So this is the number 37 medium brown. And this is a dark brown mixed with this green and the light brown. Again, would be nice if you were kind of patina, you know, really trying to do a transition. Right, you can see across these vamps right here, they're really beginning to work in brown. So, you know, as you're polishing, you know, maybe you would just take some of that, kind of that dark brown, or the medium brown right here, and work that into that. Well, that's a little too much, but you're getting the point. I'm ruining that beautiful photograph of these Corthay shoes. Thank you, Corthay, for letting us use these photographs. There you go. I mean, you know, not a perfect match. Again, you have to understand that the polish is just tinting. But if you really wanted to add some pigment into that region, this is how you would do it. And then you just would kind of smear it and then gradiate it, right? As that polish gets less and less concentrated, it's going to have less and less pigment and have even less of an impact on the transition of color. All right, so that was for our green shoes. Let's see what else we have. Beautiful brown, again, that would be pretty easy to use, so we're not gonna play with that. Purple. So next up, let's try this purple one. This seems a little bit more challenging. So we're gonna throw this palette on right there. Okay, so we've got two or three different ways that we can go here. One, we've got the burgundy polish, which is purple. Maybe there's a few notes in there that this hits, but it's really not a perfect match. So let's add a little bit of marine blue. This is the number 06, and see what this does. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of this. So this is definitely having a darkening effect. Again, actually I think we're pretty close, kind of right here on the toe. Again, you can see just how transparent this is. Let's see if we wanted to darken it even more. Let's add a touch of black. Okay, this is just a tiny dab of black. Again, this actually produces a really nice Bordeaux. I mean, this is kind of bringing us back to kind of where we were right here with the original color of the polish. So this is starting with our base colors and then mixing. Let's see if we can use the color wheel. So purple on the color wheel is created by adding red and blue. So let's see if we could do this in a different direction using the Hermes red. And the marine blue. Now this marine blue is very dark. Let's just see. So I'm going to start with the red, since that's the darker color, and add a little bit of blue. See how this mixes up. So we're getting there. It's coming to look a little bit muddled. A little bit muddled. Let's add a touch of white. Oh, look at that. Purple's really coming out nicely. So again, it's so vibrant of a white, or of a purple, that the white really kind of needed to bring that out. Yeah, so very nice. So let's see. That would work kind of right there, kind of along the edges. Again, you know, if you're doing this shoe at home, I mean, you can't use 10 different colors of polishes, so I would mix to probably whatever the lightest color is, which we actually did a pretty good job right there. Use that, you know, polish the shoe. Now the lighter colored polish isn't going to darken any of the darker areas, right? So again, by focusing on whatever the lightest color is, you know, you have that floor, that foundation. So if you needed to supplement any of the darker areas, again, we could add a little bit more blue. Make that a little bit darker, which again, you can see right here, this is blue as the base, maybe with a little bit of red on top. And then that would do a good job kind of right around those darker areas. So a little bit of fun today in the office, mixing and playing around with different colors. Let's buff our test shoe and see how this ended up. So that polish is dried. You can see that has quite a white pigment on there. So probably need the pig bristle. So the one thing I am noticing here that's quite kind of interesting is that this white pigment is actually quite strong. It doesn't have the transparency that the normal Médaille d'Or pigments do, which again is one of the reasons I like the Saphir Médaille d'Or so much, is that it's really a safe polish to use. You're not going to, totally transform or change the color of your shoes just with 1 or 2 applications. But here I'm having trouble, buffing some of that pigment off. And it's just not blending, as you can see right there. I mean, it's still pretty pronounced. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a little bit of neutral polish with my finger and kind of rubbing it into the shoe. Again, the solvents should help loosen some of those waxes and pigments. And you can see it's blending, it's actually blending quite nicely, just applying this with my hand. So this will help prevent that from being so pronounced. So there we go. I mean, that's helped to blend it a little bit more. Again, I would take my finger. And again, the neutral polish is just solvent. So a lot of people will apply the neutral polish to a pair of shoes and they'll say, it's taken off all the polish from my shoe. And the reason is that because it's neutral, it still has all those solvents in it, the pine-based turpentines that Saphir Médaille d'Or uses. You're going to see it more than you would if you were using a pigmented cream polish. You don't see it with the pigmented cream polish because as you're kind of removing those old pigments, you're adding new pigments with the polish itself. So totally different. The neutral cream polish is actually a pretty good cleaner, if you believe it. Okay, so there we go. I mean, 1 application of polish. I've got some, collecting of that white pigment that, if I was actually doing something with these shoes, I would change. It's gonna bother me now. Maybe in our next video we see if these can be actually totally salvaged just with polish. That's better. So there we go. I mean, a fuchsia pair of shoes. If you wear a size, what size are these? If you are a 9.5, and like these shoes, send us an email. We'd love to send them to you. But in all seriousness, again, the purpose of this video was to merely kind of illustrate, how much other areas of the color palette you can access just by mixing the polishes. It's really not that difficult. If anything, it's fun. If you've got a pair of shoes that you were otherwise thinking about throwing away or don't wear very often, I would absolutely encourage you to play around with the cream polishes, have fun, experiment with developing different patinas. To me, it's part of the beauty of a really high quality pair of leather shoes is that color can really transform and go so many different ways during the lifetime of the shoe itself. Now, if you ever get into a point where you're totally unhappy with what you've achieved, you've got some options. You can use the Saphir Reno'Mat to pull all that pigment out of the shoes. It's a little bit lighter than an actual decapent, which is a Saphir stripper, which you could use to actually take it back almost all the way to the crust leather to re-dye. So you're never gonna be in a situation where you've totally trashed or ruined a pair of shoes. The Reno'Mat can really bring something back from the edge. But let me know what you thought in the comments of this video. Again, a little bit different than our wheelhouse. Thought we'd have a little bit of fun. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you have any suggestions about where you'd like to see me take these shoes or where you would take them yourself, let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, check out our wax versus cream polish video where I explain in detail the important differences between wax and cream polishes. I'm Kirby Allison, and I love to help the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes while exploring the world of quality craftsmanship and tradition. Thanks for watching.